Which Florida State assistant coaches deserve to be back after the 2024 season?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Here's the big question. If Mike Norvell stays, and that's what this show is about, let's assume that he stays after this season, which assistant coaches should be let go and which ones should stay? I'm going to give a case for each person, go through it, and even talk a little bit about the combination of coaches working together. So let's just get started with the most obvious. If there's one coaching position that I think is predominantly the one that most people on Locked On Seminoles YouTube page hammer, it's Alex Atkins, the offense coordinator. Part of that is due to the fact he's also the O-line coach. So considering the offense is offensive, that I think is about as safe as it gets. But to put it in perspective, if you haven't listened to any of the shows this week, when I did the offensive preview for Florida State against Notre Dame, from the 11 statistics that I went through and found from the national ratings, and there are 134 teams in the FBS, Florida State was below 120th in 7 of them, including scoring, including rushing. I mean, they're just really, really bad. So to put it mildly, it would be shocking if Alex Atkins was back. And on top of it, and I've said this numerous times, one of the major reasons the offense and the offensive line is struggling this year is because of poor high school recruiting when he and other members of the Florida State coaching staff arrived in Tallahassee. They took it upon themselves to use the portal probably a little more here lately to make up for it, which kind of masked it. But then, even with a lot of those guys coming back this year, they've regressed. It's bizarre. He has missed across the board. Again, I will be shocked if Alex Atkins is back at Florida State for the 2025 season. I expect him to be gone at some point shortly after the regular season concludes when the Gators come to town. So, number 2 on the list for me is O-line, and that's Atkins. So right off the bat, 1 and 2 are done. But here are a couple of things that are just kind of interesting about this. And if you're wondering if Norvell will do this, just remember, I just want to throw this out there in general. I'm just going to do it at the top. I'm not saying it's going to be with Atkins, but just remember the following. As a general rule, head coaches are some of the most stubborn human beings on planet Earth. Let me give you an example. Matt Rule is the head coach at Nebraska, and their offense stinks too. It's not as bad as Florida State's, but it's pretty bad. Okay, that's a tradition-rich program. They have some expectations there. Looked like they were getting better, but they've fallen on hard times again and very may not be headed to a bowl game. That's not going to fly in Lincoln. But to that point, he's done 2 things, and it's kind of weird. He's bringing in Dana Holgorsen, the guy that was at West Virginia. He's been at Oklahoma State way back in the day as an assistant, head coach at Houston. But he's also doubled down on not getting rid of his coordinator. So do not be shocked whether it's Atkins or anybody else on this list. Norvell, I don't know if he's as stubborn as Matt Rule, but most coaches are very stubborn about firing people. And in his time as a head coach, it's not a situation where Mike Norvell has fired many people. So just remember that. Next up here, while I'm on the topic of things that kind of intertwine, no matter the coach on this list, the number one thing that needs to change across the board on this staff, offense, defense, special teams, better recruiters. Anybody that's brought in needs to be an elite recruiter. This staff, out of all the 18 to 20 programs or so that can win a title, there's really 10 to 15 most of the time, but let's just say 18 to 20, just round it out. Recruiting. Florida State might have the worst staff in major college football at high school recruiting. The entire recruiting operation needs to be discussed ad nauseum, and quite frankly, it needs to be put on notice. Anybody that's brought in, you need to lay it out one by one. Like you're literally writing it down in front of them, not some piece of paper it's been printed out. Writing it down, and that guy checks it off. I will do X. You want to write it up afterwards and run it through a printer and hand it to them to sign their name and give their initials, that's great. But they have to sign it just like it's a document that you made up in the backyard. Why? It's real. Recruiting is a life killer, meaning like your family life is garbage if you're a good recruiter. You're throwing your family life in the toilet. That is reality. If you're not willing to do that, don't come to Florida State. Norvell and every other coach in America needs to have that kind of conversation, and that is a problem right now with Florida State. It's sad, but it's true. Recruiting engulfs your life if you're good at it. I've talked to many people that get paid millions of dollars about it. This is not a news flash in my industry, but many of you probably don't know that. It is really that hard. At 11 o'clock at night or 4 in the morning, at 2 in the afternoon, whatever, when that call comes in, everything stops. And I do mean everything. That's recruiting. If you're good at it, you choose. Not many things pay you like a coaching position at Florida State University. So you decide. Next. This is a big one. For a lot of people, if it's not Atkins, it's Randy Shannon. Got to go. They're too inconsistent at linebacker, although they have gotten better. I'll give Randy credit. That needs to be a position that improves. The recruiting, again, has been too inconsistent from the time he's arrived in Tally. He's a nice guy from everything I've heard. I don't know Randy personally, but my friends that have either covered Miami or covered Florida or both have all told me the same thing, can't recruit. And I didn't know much about that until I started covering Florida State closely, because you got to get in to the nooks and crannies to find out what's going on. He's just not a guy that I ever hear his name in a definitive positive light there. So that's a problem, and it's showing up. If you look at the depth chart, too many young guys have been forced into action before they should, et cetera. And while they're getting better, there still should be at least one, if not 2 or 3, more really good players that they recruited directly out of the high school ranks that were offered by Georgia, LSU, Tennessee, Michigan, Southern Cal, et cetera. Elite players. They just haven't got it done. That alone is fireable. But the way that Florida State is lacking with their ability to go out there and make plays as it relates to run gap fits, just simple stuff, and then tackling. Like one play, it's phenomenal. The next play, it's not. It's just mind-numbing. I don't know how to explain it, because like Blake Nicholson recently got healthy, and he had a pretty good game this past week. Half tackle for loss, 7 tackles, pretty good. But the ebbs and flows are just too violent. I don't understand why it's that way. And again, recruiting's part of it, but there's something else there. I don't know what it is in regards to the message, but it's not getting home enough. I think Randy Shannon will be replaced. The next one probably won't shock anybody either. Fuller. There's been a lot of scuttlebutt about him, and while I like parts of his defense and the overall philosophy I really like, let's challenge somebody, let's be aggressive, play a lot of man defense. I like all those things. But here's the bottom line with coaching and what the difference between winning big is and just being good. Let's use the GOAT as the example. Do you think for 1 second during his tenure at Alabama, LSU, Michigan State, or as a defense coordinator with the Browns, that a guy by the name of Nick Saban suffered anybody that was just good? He got rid of guys or found them jobs many times during his tenure, just in Tuscaloosa. Guys magically left. They had a top 40 defense, but that wasn't good enough. At Bama, if you're not top 10 to 15 in something, your job's on the line. It's time Norvell looked at it from that perspective. Is that fun? No. Is that easy? Absolutely not. Is it enduring to keep your own job in Florida State moving upward? Yes, it is. Good is not good enough. It's something I've heard throughout my life and in numerous things. No different here with Florida State. Good is not good enough. It's time for a change there, in my guess, but they could, and I'm going to come back to this, they could make other changes, and this is what it's going to involve. Again, at the end of this podcast, I'm going to bring this back up because I need to get through all the positions. I could see him staying if, and it's a major one because most guys won't do this, he takes a co-DC role and or some other kind of condition where play calling is not all his or something like that, because they're just too up and down. And that includes this past week against North Carolina. And let's be honest, Florida State's defense was just smashed by North Carolina. And that's not an acceptable thing to happen at Florida State this year, or quite frankly, any other. So I think Adam Fuller's tenure is pretty good bet to end, but we'll see here real soon. When we come back, there's going to be more coaching news here at Locked On Seminoles. Get ready to tackle the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out all the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This show is also brought to you by ZBiotics. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink alcohol, it gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct and not dehydration that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to take ZBiotics before anything else for your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel better the next day. So here we go. For best results, make sure you take pre-alcohol for your first drink of the night. Second, pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. And then the next morning, wake up feeling refreshed and ready to tackle the day. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund the money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. All right, next up on the list, and this one I've been kind of saving because it's interesting. There's been a lot of discussion about Keon Coleman and his discussion with high school recruits and all that. I'd heard about this a year plus ago, and I know for a recruit in the class of 25, it turned him off of Florida State. And what's it about? I don't know all the details. I'm just passing this on second, third hand, but allegedly Keon wasn't real happy with Dugans in some capacity. Whether it was coaching, how they promoted him, how they got, I don't know. Whatever it is, it turned him off. And I do know that he has spoken to somebody, so let it be known. But that's still not a good sign. Whether you're happy with Keon or not, maybe he's looking out for the best interest of these young men because he found out something. I have no idea. I'm open-ended on it. I don't know Ron Dugans. If he walked up to me right now, I wouldn't know what the guy looked like. I've never met him. That being the case, Florida State's dropsies this year and their lack of big-time recruiting out of the prep ranks until the 24 class leaves much to be desired. So if anybody's shocked that Ron Dugans is not the guy, well, don't be shocked because this has been coming. Anytime you have multiple years at any position where you don't hit the mark based on expectations at that program, and of course Florida State's are A+, well, eventually it's going to come home to roost. As I noted earlier in the podcast, recruiting is a major problem in this program. Again, high school recruiting. Dugans is one of those guys. But again, it's weird because the 24 class was pretty darn good. I mean, they had one of the better receiver groups come into Tallahassee of any school in the country. So I don't know what you're going to do with him, but it wouldn't shock me if he was gone. It's a weird deal. Like, he's a Noles. He does have a good freshman group. They've improved some throughout the season. But there's a lot of fire there. I could see this going either way, but my guess is he's going to be gone. Again, that's just my guess. Next, this one's the hardest for me. And just take this for what it's worth because I don't know what the man wants to do. He's somebody I've looked up to for a very long time because he got so much out of his players, and he worked so hard in recruiting at Florida State. He spent his whole life in Tallahassee pretty much as an adult. That, of course, is Odell Higgins, the defensive line coach. Really good coaches find ways to end up not making an impact with the win-loss record, but I've heard a lot of stories about Odell, like the guys respected him. And I'm not trying to be mean or anything else because there's other guys that are respected and everything. But, I mean, he's putting guys in the NFL. Florida State's D-line during my time growing up into my mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s, there's no question. He was as revered a coach, assistant, period, as there was in the country. Well, he's old in the tooth now, so is that something that you can replace? I don't know. Is it something that can be taken care of in any way, shape, or form? I don't know. Because Dugans is like one experience to look at. But, he's a former Nole as well. But he doesn't have the same kind of tenure that we're talking about with Odell. I don't know what to think of that. And quite frankly, it's difficult for me to kind of push somebody out. But I don't know if Odell really wants to leave or not. But they're just okay up front. You still have to, in my opinion, consider what's going on now. They have talent, and I'm guessing the guys still like him, but is it to the level that it should be at Florida State right now? Probably not. Is that all him? Again, probably not. But, I mean, it's awkward. If there's anybody they could find a way, in any way, shape, or form, to keep on staff, even if it's just the ability to keep him around the program as some kind of associate AD, I don't know, special assignment to the athletic director, because I'd imagine he'd still want to be involved. If he wants to retire, and I'm not saying he does, I have no idea, Odell Higgins is that guy. He deserves it, and I think he's as true a Nole as there's ever been. He's one of the first guys that was a big-time recruit under Bowden, et cetera. There's a lot of history with him, so they need to find a way to make that work the best they can. Tight end coach Chris Thompson. This one's unique because kind of like with Dugans, you got two stud freshman tight ends that you recruited. But what did you do the prior 3 years in recruiting at tight end? How many of those guys did you bring in that were productive for the Florida State football program? The inability to develop some of those guys, maybe that's it. Maybe it was that more than talent. I don't know. But this leads me to believe it's at least under consideration that either he's reassigned or he's going to change positions or he's gone. Like, again, it still comes back. There's 21 and 22 classes. Too many guys didn't pan out for whatever reason. I went through it several times, even a little bit here on the show. It makes me wonder. We'll see. I don't know much about that on why they didn't, because we're never going to get the full reports on injuries and what really happened with these guys and their personal lives. But Florida State hasn't had many guys pan out that they brought in from the high school ranks. When I mean pan out, I mean like this guy can play for anybody and be a frontline player. Morlock's got talent, but he's so inconsistent. It's crazy. When he's good, he's good. When he's bad, he's bad. West and some of the other players too. It just is what it is. We'll see. Next up, I don't think there's any movement one way or the other. They've been banged up at this spot anyway, but Johnson, the running back coach, good football coach. I just don't know what you're going to do when the offensive line's that bad this year. I think the running backs were pretty good last season. They've used the balance of the portal and high school kids like Tofioli came through the system. I think Sam Singleton will, Cam Davis. So he's a better recruiter than some of the other guys, but not necessarily elite. But again, this year, I don't know how to grade him because no running back, Emmitt Smith in his prime included, is running through the Florida State line and getting 100 yards a game. It's just not going to happen. Like guys like, Eric Dickerson or Marcus Allen, I don't care. You can name any Heisman winner you want. Yeah, Barry Sanders. Those guys play behind this Florida State line. They're not getting it done either. They're not. So it's really hard to grade him. I have no idea what they're going to do. I could see him being a holdover guy, regardless of what happens with Norvell and the rest of the staff. But part of that will come back to something I want to talk about here in a second with the offensive coordinator. But Tokars, same problem again. 21, 22 classes. Recruiting didn't work out. They put him behind. Then you get a transfer that doesn't work. Now you're in the spot you're in, the redshirt freshman and a true freshman. Tokars is one guy I've met. And he's a really nice guy. I could see why he would be personable and people would like him. Very engaging person. But at the same time, You are what you are. In the 21 and 22 classes, they didn't get it done. It's just true. So that onus was on you at DJ, and you guys didn't accomplish the task, obviously. I don't know if he will be gone, but that's probably going to come down to this. Papachi is the special teams guy. Like, you do everything you can to keep him. Things have gone well there. I think that's obvious. The coordinator hire is the most important on either side of the ball. And once you hire a coordinator, they usually help fill in the gaps. There are exceptions with that, and I want to explain that next here on Locked On Seminoles, because it honestly gets complex. There's a lot of theories on this, and I want to explain right after this. All right, if you have not downloaded the Gametime app yet, you are missing out. If you're somebody like me who's impatient, who wants to get things done quickly, but still go have some fun, whether it's a concert, whether it's a movie or a sporting event, NHL, MLB, NBA, college football, whatever it may be, Gametime is for you. Just download the app, and right from your phone, you can check out the following. You can see the seat after you type in something like Florida State Seminoles. You can type in Tampa Bay Lightning, whatever it is you're trying to do. You can see the seat, see it in that venue to the playing surface. It's pretty cool. So make sure you're checking it out. Number one, though, with me is still all-inclusive pricing. This is something you can set up and toggle in the app. Make sure you do that. There's nothing worse than seeing a price somewhere online and then you get to the back end, it's like 50% more. They allow you to fix that with Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. The complexities with college football hiring processes is weirder and weirder and weirder by the year. Sometimes they try to force a coordinator to take a coach, and sometimes not. I can't tell you how many times I've been told there's a coaching search going on for a coordinator. He says he'll take the job, but, and this is where the complexities begin on his end, he has to have coach A and B come with him. He knows they will come. Here's the problem. One of those two coaches also coaches a position that the school this guy's going to already has somebody that you have to take. They want somebody for continuity. Maybe he's their best recruiter. Maybe he's just really good buddies with the AD, whatever. That kind of stuff happens a lot. And that's why a lot of coaching things go poof, and you won't hear that necessarily in the public. It happens. I have no idea, none whatsoever, if that's going to happen this offseason with Florida State. I really don't. But I can guarantee you it's going to happen somewhere, so I want you to be aware of it. Also, if there is going to be somebody that stays, I'm just curious for those of you that are replying on YouTube, which place would it be? The running back coach? Is it Surtain? Like, I didn't even bring up Surtain. There's no way you're trying to fire him. He's been a pretty good recruiter. He's only been there for a short while. He's a legendary coach. So if you're wondering why I didn't bring him up a little bit ago, that's why. There's no reason. Is it Surtain? Is it somebody else? Name 2 or 3 coaches that you would like to see stay. If there's that many, I don't know, whatever it is, and specifically why. For me, Surtain's the easiest. I could see, if you want to say Thompson because he's got the 2 young tight ends, okay. Johnson, that's fine. You could even pitch me on Dugans to a certain degree, but you'd have to really try hard. But I think a lot of guys, it's going to be very difficult. Tokars, I think we need to see the next few games with the young quarterbacks to make a judgment. That's fair enough. Obviously, again, special teams, it's no big deal. But a lot of this stuff, these guys that come in, whoever they are, they've got to be not just better recruiters for the Noles, far better. Florida State is nowhere near where they need to be as a recruiting staff. I cannot stretch that into the air far enough, far and wide enough, because Florida State's just, they're mediocre at recruiting right now. How does that happen in Florida State? It's just ridiculous. So we'll see what happens. But as far as the movement goes, as far as it taking off or not taking off, I think you'll start to see something around the weekend that the Noles host the Gators. So that's only a few weeks away. And the rumors will come out. And here's what I mean by that. These coaches know if they're gone. More than likely. Like the way it works through the back channels, with all these agents, they talk. And they're also talking with their buddies at other schools, and they know when spots are open. Sometimes, even if it's not the better job because there's so much money in being an assistant coach, they'll go take another one because there's security. They're going to get a 3-year contract somewhere, and they're only signed like 1 or 2 more years here. Or it's a scenario where they know the head coach at another school better, whatever it is. Maybe they want to live there. It's closer to their wife's family, whatever it might be. So there could be some people that vamoose without getting fired. Maybe even some guys you didn't think necessarily wanted to leave could. There's all kinds of possibilities with this. So to keep that in mind. Once again, thank you for checking out Locked On Seminoles and making it your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate it. Make sure you hit that notification bell and that like button. Subscribe to this podcast and share it. I'm truly appreciative. And if you want, again, I'd really like it if you commented, because there's so many things to talk about with the coaching moves, and there's going to be a bunch that involve Florida State over the next month and a half. Guarantee it. So let's check back in tomorrow and see what happens. Everybody have a good one. Take care.